The IOC's example and expel South Africa from yet more sporting events.
Well, I do hope so, but there are not many left. She's been out of several already. But they're out of boxing, they're out of football, they're out of basketball, they're nearly out of everything.
Judo, fencing, gymnastics, table tennis, volleyball. By the 1970s, South Africa had been banned from nearly every international sporting competition except one.
To us in South Africa, rugby, it is really our God.
Rugby is probably as well supported in South Africa as baseball and football and basketball thrown together in the United States. I mean, it's the sport.
The South African national team, the Springboks, was the #1 power in the world in rugby. They just crushed their opposition.
South Africa wins by 17 points to 6.
Springboks win an excellent game by 17 points to 5.
It was a goal. Springboks won 8-3.
So this was an enormous reinforcement of this Herrenvolk mentality, this notion of a super race, superhumans, not just white, but supreme white.
The slogan were, "You're not the best until you've beaten the box."
And just to be chosen, just to the thought of putting that green and gold Springbok jersey over your head, I mean, words cannot actually describe that. It's a magic moment.
Just a year after the Mexico Olympics, South Africa's rugby team set off on a world tour. They planned to play against their most important competitors: New Zealand, Australia and Britain.
Heathrow Airport. Demonstrators faced a cordon of security staff as they prepared to greet the incoming Springbok rugby touring team from South Africa. The Springboks captain commented that they'd come to play rugby and not worry about politics.
When we arrived, you know, they were at the airport already holding up banners, you know, go home and you're not wanted in the UK and equal rights to everybody and, you know, just placards and all that type of thing. And they went out of their way to make our life a misery. And we played our first game against Oxford University. Supposedly easy game, and Oxford beat us 6-3. So the tour got off to a really bad start.
What had begun as the 1969 Springbok tour had now suddenly become a battleground in the worldwide anti-apartheid struggle.
This was the period of student politics and the campus sit-ins all over the world. And there were the Vietnam protests. And I was becoming engaged in all of that and becoming involved in direct action politics. And I started to think, well, we could apply the kind of direct action tactics to the apartheid fight in sport. And this is something I always felt we could win. When I lived in South Africa, my mother and father were deeply involved in the anti-apartheid struggle. They were both jailed for periods. They were also banned. Now, a banning order meant that you couldn't take part in political activity. It meant that you couldn't communicate with another banned person. And so when my mother was banned, that was okay. When my father was banned a year later, they each had to be given special provision to talk to each other. This is an Orwellian type of nightmare of what apartheid actually meant in ordinary terms. We were forced to leave South Africa and we settled in London.
I went to the London School of Economics, and it just so happened that there were a whole contingent of exiled South Africans there, and they told us that the system in South Africa was wrong and it had got to be opposed. And it was actually encouraging racists throughout the whole world. And the South African exiles were saying, if you really want to hurt them, you stop them playing rugby.
It's very difficult to beat a multinational corporation trading with an apartheid economy. It's very difficult to buck the world of international finance, which was supporting South Africa. But sport was out there, it was available, it was open, it was exposed. And if we applied direct action tactics to it, we could stop it.
To keep the peace at Lansdowne Road tomorrow, the police are relying on two things: manpower and barbed wire.
Demonstrations outside and inside every single rugby ground. There were demonstrations outside the hotels. People did incredible things.
On one occasion, in London, we booked a young girl into the Springboks hotel. And in the early hours of the morning, before an international match, she went round and gummed up their door locks so they couldn't get out of their rooms in the morning. They had to break the doors down.
One man, dressed up as a driver of a coach, got into the Springboks coach with a full team in it, drove them off to Hemel Hempstead and left them in a field.
In another case, a man specially bred rabbits and arranged with his friends to go with his bags into the rugby field and then open the bags so rabbits would run all over.
Someone else was breeding moles to release on Old Trafford rugby ground if the Springboks were going to play there. There was actually one serious debate about whether moles or locusts would be the most effective method.
They'd fill a bottle with tacks and then throw it onto the field. The bottle would break open and all these pieces of glass and all these tacks would be all over the field. Then you'd have to stop the game and we'd all be picking up these pieces of glass because if you fall on it, you're going to cut yourself. In the back of one's mind, you're just thinking maybe someone's got a gun and they're going to shoot one of us or something.
It wasn't a nice thing to watch because of the intimidation of our sports people, throwing all kinds of things on the sports field. After all, the participants were not responsible for the policies.
I think they've been a tremendous success, yes. At every point, we've had the physical effect on the tour has been quite fantastic. It's been the most disastrous tour ever by a team coming to Britain. Inside South Africa, the white sports officialdom and the structure has been thrown into frightened turmoil. They'd always thought that despite everything, despite the fact that they were regarded as the lepers of the world, as the pariahs of the world because of the evil system of apartheid, but they could still trade, they could still have their tourism, they could still do business, and they could still be accepted as equal and respectable guests in the sports arenas of the world. And now this sport was being stopped, and they hated it.
We never went back to Britain.
It was a tremendous victory born out of a genuinely popular movement, and it proved a cathartic event. Direct action had finally stopped something.